Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started. Okay, we've got a truly layered stack of sources today, sent in by one of our listeners, and we're ready to plunge in.
We are. Today, our sources come from selected excerpts of Colum McCann's novel Twist. It's a complex, looping story that follows one man's journey. It's quite something.
And these aren't just plot points, right?
Yeah.
What we have here includes narrative passages, deep reflections from the narrator himself, and also reported events from within the world of the book.
Exactly. So our mission isn't just to, summarize, but to follow the story as it unfolds through these specific passages. We want to extract the key events, the characters the narrator encounters, and crucially, those surprising insights he either discovers or reveals along the way.
Absolutely. We're going to piece together the progression of this narrative and trace the various threads, personal, global, technical, that the narrator explores through his experiences. Let's unpack this.
Okay, so the story opens with our narrator feeling pretty adrift in Dublin. He uses this really evocative language, doesn't he? Describing himself as living between the lines, full of average griefs, rusty desires.
Yeah, there's a real sense of inertia there, like feeling stuck.
Totally, like he's just watching life from the sidelines, maybe even envying people who brave the cold seawater.
But then something shifts. A job offer arrives.
Right, from someone named Sacchini. It's a writing gig, apparently with a decent word count and a generous budget. Sounds good.
And this offer becomes the catalyst, doesn't it? It takes him across the world to Cape Town.
And his initial impressions of the city are incredibly vivid. He immediately picks up on the post-apartheid complexities, that stark contrast between the city's natural beauty and the adjacent poverty.
You feel the history everywhere, too. The Mandela statues, Miriam Makeba songs, the memory museums he mentions.
Yes, and there's a fascinating detail right away where he mentions feeling unexpectedly at home in Cape Town.
Which is a huge contrast to Dublin, where he felt so adrift. What do you make of that?
Well, it's subtle, isn't it? But telling. It suggests he might be finding something he lacked back home, maybe a sense of place, or perhaps even a challenge that resonates with him, even if it's just that initial feeling.
And interestingly, he makes a very deliberate choice early on.
He does. He decides to avoid the typical township tours. He feels it would be voyeuristic.
Right, and he later connects this feeling to Zanelle's description of her own experience, doesn't he? In Joe Slovo Township, talking about the different soundtracks of people's early years.
That connection is key. It moves his decision beyond just personal discomfort, really. It becomes a reflection on perspective, privilege, and how different people experience the same place, the same history, with vastly different, soundtracks.
Another striking image early on is his observation of that young woman in a white dress walking into the sea at night on the beach. She just vanishes.
Yes, it's almost like seeing a ghost, isn't it? He considers the possibilities. Was it joy, religious fervor, or, tragedy, drowning?
But what really stays with him, and with you as the reader, is the city's apparent indifference. It just seems to swallow her up.
It adds this layer of mystery, maybe a subtle commentary on the city itself, its secrets.
And this solitary observation kind of leads him into the city's more official circles, where he meets Conway at a bar. Conway's introduced as a chief of mission.
And he has this intriguing demeanor. He talks about watching people who are doing the actual work of the world, almost separating himself from it, even though he's clearly in a significant position.
He also reveals he started as a diver. And the narrator immediately notices Conway's talent for blending in. He just fits anywhere.
Yeah, chameleon-like.
Yeah.
And it's here, seeing Conway, that he also sees Zanelle for the first time.
He senses this immediate, extraordinarily bound connection between them. Zanelle's an actress, we learn, heading to England for a performance.
Of Waiting for Godot, no less, by Beckett. A play famous for, waiting. And we also learn the narrator's own background mirrors this a bit. He's a journalist, but has also written plays. So there's a connection there.
Zanelle's project sounds fascinating. She's adapting Godot, but focusing it around climate change. That's a really potent metaphor.
It is, and she quotes Beckett's lines like, "Let us do something while we have the chance," and blaming on his boots the faults of his feet.
That last one really captures it, doesn't it? Blaming external factors for our own failing.
Perfectly. But she also offers resilience, quoting, "What's the good of losing heart now?" So it's not purely pessimistic, her take.
We also get some personal details. Conway and Zanelle are partners. They have twins, though the narrator only sees the boy at this point. And Conway's from Rathlin Island, family not there anymore.
And this is where the narrative structure gets really interesting, because right after introducing these people, this relationship, the narrator tells us, almost casually, that Conway is now dead.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. He's left piecing things together from the future, explicitly stating that all memory is conjecture.
Telling us the outcome up front completely changes how you read everything that follows, doesn't it? You're not waiting to find out if something happens to Conway, but how and why, and how the narrator understands it, knowing memory is unreliable.
Exactly. And despite the tragic outcome he knows, he remains convinced of Conway and Zanelli's love, which is a powerful statement about his subjective truth amidst all that conjecture.
This complex view of truth and memory is immediately followed by a really vivid flashback. It's about a photograph that haunted him, a tiny girl during a flood in Rwanda near the Congo River.
It's a powerful image, almost visceral. He describes the immense force of the swollen river, carrying all that debris, sand, silt, stone, dust, drowned boats, cars, even bones. He likens it to the river purging itself.
And he notes how the river's current shoots far out into the Atlantic, creating this vast underwater sediment shelf.
That image of the river purging itself, carrying everything out to sea, it feels like it might be a metaphor for other things that get swept away or hidden later on, you know?
Definitely feels like foreshadowing. But back in the main timeline, a key turn comes with a phone call from Conway. This is after Conway has handed in my resignation.
And Conway sounds different, doesn't he? Melancholic, maybe drunk. He mentions hearing from Zanelle and invites the narrator to meet him at Hout Bay the next day for diving.
Adding, before there's too much of a swell. A little ominous, maybe?
Perhaps. When they meet, Conway smells of booze but appears clear-eyed, which is a curious detail in itself. The narrator feels completely out of place among the freedivers.
Yeah, he feels soft and pale, hadn't planned on diving at all. But Conway takes his camera and satchel, kind of drawing him into their world.
He joins Conway and the freedivers, including a woman named Sally, and she brings in these seemingly unrelated scientific ideas: Heisenberg, the uncertainty principle, turbulence.
Linking it to the difficulty of explaining physics, it feels a bit random at first.
But the narrator connects this later to his feeling of envy for Conway's friends, right around when the actual snap occurred. It highlights his feeling of being an outsider looking in on this community that seems to understand complexities he doesn't grasp.
And Sally mentioning Heisenberg's two questions for God. Why relativity? Why turbulence? Feels relevant, doesn't it, given the unpredictable, turbulent nature of what's about to unfold?
Absolutely. Their conversation drifts. They talk about Zanelle rehearsing in Brighton. Conway mentions he hasn't gone over. Conway also talks about his own past as a diver.
Right, spending days underwater for good money, going beyond the lines of light. That's evocative.
And there's a brief moment where Sally points out Conway isn't a ship captain, he's a chief of mission. The narrator knew this, but felt protective, almost like correcting the detail was an attack on Conway.
Interesting. He stays with the divers, observing their techniques, the slow frog work, calling it ancient theater, moving through physical atmospheres. He sees the dangers too, equalizing ears, blacking out near the surface, their search for inner space.
And this is where he encounters Petra, a Polish woman clearly infatuated with Conway.
Oh, Petra.
Yeah.
She provides quite a stream of insinuations, doesn't she?
Oh, yes. That Conway and Zanel aren't married, that the kids aren't his, a suspicion the narrator admits he might have had, given the boy's skin color. She hints at Conway's dark side, missing years, corrects his origin, and she says Belfast. Narrator knows it's Rathlin Island, mentions time in the Middle East.
And she says he aspires downward. That's a really loaded phrase.
It is. On the surface, it could mean diving, literally going down,
Yeah.
but the way she says it, it sounds like a judgment, suggesting a darker downward trajectory for Conway.
The narrator dismisses a lot of it, notes her sharp edges, but that phrase seems to stick.
And then everything changes, suddenly, with what the narrator calls the snap.
Yeah, news breaks of a massive internet slowdown, specifically in Western South Africa. His immediate thought is a cable down, maybe one of Conway's.
He tries to call Conway, but there's no signal. He sees the public panic in his hotel lobby, people frantically trying to connect, someone briefly getting signal and acting all important about it. He notes everyone seems caught up in the inner workings of their devices, totally unaware of the actual infrastructure.
That invisibility of infrastructure becomes a major theme, doesn't it? He even tries to check out of the hotel by claiming he's a fiber optic guy involved in the repair, just to bypass the rules.
And he reflects on how most people don't know information travels via cold, wet wires under the sea, not just magically through the air or satellites.
Getting to the port is a struggle. He describes seeing a woman at an underpass asking for money, even writing briefly on a car bonnet to get through traffic. He gives her money a brief, sharp moment of human connection amidst the chaos.
He finally gets a taxi to the port and sees the cable-laying ship, the George's LeCointe, behind security fencing. He has to wait for an hour.
Then he meets Sam Kello, Conway's deputy, and also the chief medic.
Sam Cullo shows him to his cabin and explains the situation. They're locked in, port by a gale, a black southeaster, over 30 knots. Port rules mean they can't leave or load the necessary cable. Conway, as the boss, is staying on the ship with the captain, and significantly, Conway has to sign off on any internet access. He controls the connection.
Wow, okay. And on the second morning stuck in port, the storm gets worse. The narrator gets miserably seasick, even just tied up at the dock.
Conway visits him, sees how bad he is, and this leads to a critical point. Conway offers him the chance to leave the ship right then.
But makes it clear he won't be allowed back on board if he goes. He suggests the seasickness might pass at sea, but forces an immediate decision.
The narrator doesn't tell us his choice in that exact moment, but the next section reveals he stayed. He must have decided to stick it out.
Right. On the fourth morning, he wakes up, and the landscape is just open sea. The ship was towed out by a tugboat while he slept. The giant cable tanks loaded. They're in the channel, Cable Mountain fading in the distance. He's committed now.
He talks to Hercules, a crewman on deck. Hercules asks about his writing. Is it for a book, an online article? Curious about being quoted.
And the narrator notes he has full phone service, telling Hercules, "They hooked me up yesterday."
Which is a small detail, but it highlights his privileged position, doesn't it, compared to the crew? Most of them only have a shared computer with a 20-minute limit for social media because satellite access is so restricted and expensive.
He offers his phone, but Hercules declines. They talk about the hierarchy on board.
Hercules shares a casual joke about gambling on waves, mentions his family. He also notes the lack of women on board, saying, doesn't make for any weird fuckery, which the narrator privately agrees with. It's a very male environment.
Conway offers a completely different perspective on the deep ocean itself, though. He describes it as purest dark, a place where nobody has ever been down there, not a soul.
But then he immediately flips that idea, stating forcefully, more life on the bottom of the ocean than anywhere else. He talks about vents, layers, currents, creatures that betray all the categories, this concept of marine snow.
And he makes this profound claim. That's where we came from, the original place. He argues the ocean isn't a void, but a solid, a medium, and we've forgotten how to think about it that way.
That's a striking counterpoint to seeing the ocean as just empty space to run cables through. It reframes their task within something ancient, teeming with hidden life.
It really does. The narrator spends evenings on deck with the crew, observing this teeming ocean life, whale fluke, swordfish, mackerel bait balls, terns, albatross. It's all alive out there.
And this journey at sea, this isolation, the rhythm of the ship, it seems to unlock deeper reflections for the narrator about his own past, particularly his marriage to Irenea.
He recounts meeting her in hospital, even lying to visit her, nursing her back to health from osteomyelitis. Marrying her when she was pregnant, despite her family's disapproval, they wanted a real Irishman.
He quotes Neruda at their wedding, feeling they'd found a newness and tenderness, describing a profound sadness using the Portuguese word saudade.
But it ended. She left a note quoting Larkin when their son, Jolie, was just 1.5. She was later diagnosed with depression. He describes his reaction tears, turning to alcohol, even soaking his toothbrush in whiskey. Pretty bleak.
He attempted to reconcile in Santiago, but she had built a completely new life choreographer, medicine, another partner she called Papa Ito. He reflects on his own ability to break away easily, maybe too easily, and his acceptance of this peaceful and distant performance of fatherhood.
It leads him to think about writing a letter to his now 16-year-old son, Jolie, reflecting on seeing the world's brokenness and touching on Gramsci's idea, pessimist of the intellect, optimist of the will.
That really ties his personal sense of brokenness and his search for meaning to the larger, complex world he's navigating on this ship, dealing with this broken cable.
Yeah, the parallels are strong. Back on the ship, we see another instance of communication control. He observes a crewman, Petrus, using a satellite phone on deck, and Conway just takes it from him.
This control over communication becomes even more apparent with the narrator's own privileged online access. He texts his editor, Sacchini, describing his situation quite dramatically. Sick, at sea, a 5-alarm fire, an underwater shit show. He's building his narrative.
Sacchini sends him a Cape Town article about the cable being down, the economic danger, the ship, a 2-week repair estimate. He notes the lack of online chatter specifically about their ship, the Georges LeCointe. Sacchini keeps trying to get him to focus on the technical details, cable manufacturing.
But he steers her back to the human drama, right? The fire at sea narrative. He wants the story, the people.
Then the external pressure really ramps up. The publicist, Elizabeth, calls the ship via satellite phone. Her voice is distorted, reflecting the difficulty of the connection itself.
And she reports intense, negative chatter, flack for the company because of the storm delay.
She spells out the stakes, the perception that the ship is too slow, the repair taking too long, jeopardizing entire economies. Ghana, Nigeria, Angola have lost connection, affecting hospitals, governments, mobile firms. It's serious.
And she makes him an offer. A scoop for the Financial Times, no less, if he'll write a reassurance piece.
Basically, PR. Emphasize broad strokes, the boat's on time, no need for panic. Essentially, preempt and neutralize the negative story.
His internal reaction is fascinating. He's validated, flattered by the offer, the interest from such a big paper, but he also feels pressure to resist sacrificing his journalistic principles.
Though he admits, maybe honestly, that his resistance is horseshit in that moment. He'd love to be in those papers. It's a real conflict.
He observes Conway's reaction to this pressure, seeing him visibly tightening. Yet he also finds Conway's intense focus on the actual repair admirable. Conway's just trying to fix the damn cable.
So the narrator retreats to his cabin to write the piece for Elizabeth. Finds it incredibly difficult, calls the story Dog Bites Man. Basic, uninspired.
He writes something passable, but it's slow to load, and once it's gone, he feels melancholy, like he gave something false away, a clear moment of compromise.
Despite that internal compromise, he seems to find a physical resilience. He rides out a storm at sea, 7-foot waves, and, unlike in port, doesn't get sick this time. He even finds beauty in lightning and thunder, still south of the equator.
The core of their mission is the grapnel operation. He describes the dangerous process of lowering this heavy chain, rope its slow descent through incredible depths, past the twilight zone, down kilometers, all followed on screens.
It's grappling in absolute darkness, navigating potential snags like rocks, roots, even debris washed out from the continent tree branches, car mufflers. The cable's likely buried in sediment down there.
The grapnel has to find where the cable emerges, grab it, trigger a cutting blade using tension, sever the line, and bring it up in a claw. It sounds incredibly difficult.
And their first sweep comes up empty. Conway gathers the crew notably. The narrator isn't invited again, highlighting his outsider status on deck with a map, like a conductor.
He explains the plan. Drive the grapnel west to east, perpendicular to the cable route, lay new cable away from nick points. Those are vulnerable spots on the seabed. He mentions needing to fix a second and third break, confirms they have enough spare cable, considers the repeaters.
The amplifiers needed along the cable. Makes sense.
Yeah. And despite being excluded, the narrator feels a grudging admiration for the difficulty of the task. He respects the skill involved.
Practical concerns surface among the crew again. Alonzo asks about the slow computer time, needing to contact families. Conway acknowledges it, offers access to his personal account or the sat phone for emergencies. He's managing his crew.
And we see moments of real camaraderie and humor again. Someone asks, "How's Zanelle?" Conway replies she's doing well, that they found Godot, adding humorously, they caught him with a grapnel.
That gets genuine laughter. Even Omar the cook joins in, joking that the food sucks, also getting laughs. The narrator notes the men seem looser. Conway has opened them up.
Conway motivates them. Catch this thing tomorrow. Fix this fucking thing. Promises they'll be back in Camp's Bay soon.
Amidst all this technical work, the grapnel retrieves something unexpected. An octopus.
Yeah, it has mud on it, which is noted as odd, and it's translucent. They decide to take a sample, freeze the rest for science. Chef Danny tries to say they're common, seen them all the time in Vietnam, but then Lavu corrects him. The cooks even take selfies with it.
A moment of strange, deep-sea beauty interrupting the hard technical work. The narrator visits the computer room later and sees the two young cooks, Phileas and Omar, there, with the octopus selfie on screen. They let him take a photo after hearing the word magazine.
Late one night, or maybe early morning, the foghorn sounds. The narrator knows it meant only one thing. A signal. He scrambles out, joins the crew climbing stairs, noticing he can now take them without being winded. A small sign of his own physical adaptation to life at sea.
He describes the night, clear, sharp, full of stars, and the foghorn sound itself. A long, loud whistle, very beautiful, not unlike a whale sound. It's a sound that seems to call to him, connect him to something bigger.
And this sound prompts him to reflect on Zanelle's play adaptation again. Her use of Godot as a metaphor for climate change, rising seas, garbage, disappearing meadows, hope is just a rumor. The lighting dimming speaks the truth of the play. The coral stage tree losing its color.
It connects the environmental concerns Zanelle highlights in her art to the literal undersea world he's now inhabiting, where they're fixing this piece of global infrastructure.
And then comes this stunning, improbable coincidence. The first cable repair is completed at almost the exact same time as the attack on Zanelle occurred. He notes the sun descends like a curtain falls.
Wow. That simultaneity links these two seemingly unrelated events, the technical fix and the violent attack in the narrator's mind. We don't know if there's a causal link yet, but the timing feels deeply significant, almost fateful.
The narrator admits to being out of line, talking with Conway shortly after, and Conway calls him on it sharply. Conway orders Semkalo to test the cable one last time, then gives the command, "Get out of here now." It's the first time the narrator hears Conway addressed formally as Sir.
Things feel different. By morning, the ship is moving north.
Conway gathers the crew, again, narrator still not invited to tell them about Zanelle's attack. He relays it was out of the blue, she's in shock, but out of danger with no lasting damage. She is grateful for their concern and wants to finish the play. He stresses they need to fix the second and third breaks to return safely. It's a motivator now.
Meanwhile, back on land, a media frenzy erupts around Zanelle. It makes the front page as acid trip, leading to tweets and chatter covering everything race, art, climate change, her celebrity.
Rumors spread like wildfire. She's scarred, it was a fellow actor, maybe she even organized it herself. The narrator notes the chilling comparison of photos, a beach publicity shot versus her on a stretcher, breasts bared, pixelated but still. He highlights the paramedics' anguish, sensing the two women understood the implications of this public exposure.
The repair work continues despite the external drama, but the cable is eluding them. Conway tries another angle. The last repair is a feeder cable off Ghana, close to shore, expected to be easy.
Alonzo asks about computer time family again. Conway repeats his offer. The jokes about Zanelle, found Godot, and the food continue, reinforcing that the men are somehow looser despite the pressure.
Later, alone in his cabin, the narrator uses his web access again, calling it a rabbit hole. He confirms Zanelle's recovering, learns she defiantly said fuck it, and returned to the stage, filling the house. The Beckett estate even relented for a short charity run benefiting Isaklo, her organization.
And Zanelle wore a bandage over her ear, which became an iconic echo. The publicity around her is intense. Police, reporters, security, metal detectors, scalp tickets, tabloids. She's a phenomenon.
The narrator talks with Conway again. Conway stresses keeping the eye on the prize, finishing the job so everyone can leave. Back to Cape Town is still the plan. The narrator probes, asking if Z will join him there.
Conway gently corrects him, Zanelle, and says yes.
Then the narrator asks about London, or going up north, seemingly hinting at Rathlin Island. Didn't you say? But he's interrupted by a radio call from Abdul. Conway leaves abruptly, leaving crumpled napkins behind. It feels like the narrator is getting close to something personal again, and Conway shut it down fast.
And right after that, back in his cabin, the narrator is met with the spinning wheel of death. No internet.
He feels like he's back in the snap at the mall, that total disconnection.
He realizes Conway has cut him off, denied him his privileged access. He confronts Conway, I do or I don't, Conway, and Conway confirms you don't.
The narrator describes his anger, feeling that chess term, zigzwang. Trapped. Any move makes it worse.
Yeah, powerless. He goes to the gym, sees the younger crew, feels his age. He exercises intensely, reflecting angrily on Conway as a liar, an imposter, part of the general wreckage.
He longs for a firmness beneath my feet, literally and figuratively, away from the ocean, away from this uncertainty.
He actively avoids Conway now, watching him study the mud on the grapnel. He suspects Conway is hiding something, and that's why he cut off the internet to stop him digging.
He goes to the computer room, finds the line of men waiting for their 20-minute limit. He searches Conway's name, nothing. No Rathlin Island listings, no photos. He's absent from newer articles about Zanelle. He finds Aubrey Amodi mentioned formed a Ciclo with Zanelle, a London actor. Then his timer goes off. out.
He feels obsessive, stupid, goes back to the gym, calls it a form of drinking, a breathless abyss. He's physically pushing himself, losing pounds, channeling his frustration.
He sees Conway on deck looking portside, feels a strong urge to confront him, accuse him of lying, silence, cover-up. Notes the cable itself is gnawing at us all. The pressure is immense.
The foghorn sounds again, and this time it feels like it's sounding just for me. Omar cheers, the other men leave the gym. The narrator is alone, looks in the mirror, first time in the best part of a decade reflecting on his age. A moment of intense self-scrutiny.
Then, Conway surprisingly shows him photos on his phone. Zanelle at a party, with 2 men and another woman full of laughter, joy. Aubrey Modi is there, tall, thin, confident.
Conway comments that Zanelle's life is cotton whirl, she touched a nerve, is the body electric, experiencing the curse of fame. He notes she's just about everywhere and has sought refuge, safety with Modi. These photos paint a different picture from the media narrative, showing her finding joy and support, moving on perhaps.
It complicates everything again, just as he thinks he has Conway figured out as a liar. This happens.
Exactly. And then the ship finally crawled into Accra on the edge of the gloaming. The narrator realizes they crossed the equator without any ritual, just work.
Conway seems relatively unchanged, maybe just slightly tired, maintaining his calm facade. He explains their approach to the landing station near Accra. They'll locate the break in the morning, probably a fishing accident, shallow water, easy fix. He predicts a quick turnaround, proud of the crew. Seems normal.
But the narrator sees the outline of land for the first time in 6 weeks. Accra is mostly dark. The internet slowdown since the snap has hit hard. Hospitals, government, TV stations affected. He feels the brokenness. He'd craved the shore and now smells fire from the coastline, burning tires.
As the ship moves slowly in shallow water, he sees wooden dhows, searchlights, hears voices. A pirogue returns with fishermen looking gaunt and exhausted. He sees fires burning in barrels along the shore, shadows. Notes the oddity of seeing human figures beyond the boat after so long at sea. It's like re-entering the world.
The Georges is guided into safe water. The narrator retreats to his cabin, writes notes, writes lines to his son, Jolie, feeling he is now in touching distance of the world again.
He wakes up in Accra the next morning and notices Sam Kalo and Abdul conferring intently outside Conway's door, a detail he doesn't quite process at the time.
He goes to the mess, then up on deck, heat's gathering, sees the city, palms, birds, beach. The landing station is just a small, flat-roofed house, fenced in, inconspicuous. Boys are playing soccer against the fence. Life goes on.
And this arrival, this scene in Accra, triggers a really significant reflection on Francis Ford Coppola's film Apocalypse Now.
Right. What struck him was the contrast between two realities. The famous fictional scene of Martin Sheen's character, Willard, going mad, punching the mirror, which becomes this powerful work of art, believed as a coherent whole lodged in your mind.
And the actual reality behind it. Martin Sheen was apparently drunk or high, had an unscripted meltdown, actually bled, needed a medic, 2 totally different things.
Exactly. He notes the invented gets shut down the tube, the other, the real, gets lost in the haze. This parallel feels incredibly relevant to his own search for the truth about Conway, doesn't it? Is he chasing an invented narrative, or is the messy, unpredictable reality something else entirely, something that just gets lost?
So for the first 2 days in Accra, the narrator actively walks the city, searching for any sign of Conway, looking for his knit cap, following figures, obsessively.
He visits markets, the waterfront, the airport police checked manifests, nobody saw him. Bus station, hotel lobbies, nothing. He learns tourists come seeking routes, while Accra was the place of no return for others, a place of new ghosts.
He walks through the heat, visits bars but doesn't drink, wants to be sober when he finds Conway. The city smells of promise, secrets, confusion. He feels possessed, unsure what bothers him more. Conway left or that he didn't say anything.
Back in his hotel room, the digital disconnect is complete. Internet entirely out, phone not working, cyber cafes shuttered. The physical space reflects the snap ashore, air conditioning stocks. Water seeps into the carpet, it's falling apart.
The Georges is still in the bay. The crew searched the water, specialist divers searched the seafloor, Coast Guard did sweeps, nothing. Conway has vanished. Calls to Zanelle in London confirm she hadn't heard from him. She's distraught, surrounded by handlers. Petra checked his bungalow in Cape Town, locked, undisturbed.
Conway has vanished completely. The narrator tries calling the publicist, gets an answering machine, checks the front desk, but the man is surly, dismisses him. Sir has no currency here. The clock hands seem to want to escape the slow, frustrating reality.
He waits for the George's foghorn, that sound that meant so much, but it just floats silently. He thinks of Petrus, the crewman Conway, stopped from using the phone.
At the hotel bar, he notices a young detective, Akosua, watching him in the mirror. He joins her. She introduces herself, says no new developments. She prefers hotel bars to avoid local men, wears an engagement ring, and she offers this profound observation. If the world does anything, it confuses.
That line just resonates with everything the narrator is experiencing. The confusion, the conflicting realities, the vanishing act. It's perfect.
The next morning, he walks the beach to the landing station again. Men sleeping under palms, boys playing football away from the fence. Same scene. Heat rising from the sand.
But when he returns later, the scene is dramatically changed. There's a scrum of cars and TV vans, police lights, a black Mercedes. Boys are pressed against the fence, fingers clenched, watching. A press reception is underway, politicians, businessmen.
Akosu is there, guarding the politicians, and waves the narrator through security. He notices, pointedly, that not a single person from the Georges is present. None of the crew who did the work.
The press conference finishes quickly. The message is simple, presented as if magical. The internet is returning, things are repaired. Crucially, nobody mentions Conway.
Akoso pulls the narrator aside and tells him it has been classified.
Classified. The official narrative is created problem fixed magically, silently. This completely overwrites the difficult reality the narrator witnessed, the search, the vanishing. It highlights the power of institutions to control the story, make the messy reality disappear into haze, just like his apocalypse now reflection.
So the narrator is now in a condo. He notes its size, echoing emptiness, white walls, glass, cheap furniture, ants. It has aircon and a dehumidifier, a sterile contrast to the city outside. He sets up a desk by a window with a seascape view, but opens the doors for sea air. Sits for hours, listening to waves, watching birds, trying to process.
He starts taking notes in a file marked Madame Georges, dealing with the frequent electricity blackouts, another layer of infrastructure challenges right there.
And he reflects on his writing process, his initial mandate, talk about the wires, how they broke, the repair boats. His initial plan was simple. Cape Town boat, Congo mudslide, hop, ship at sea, add some history, fiber optics, interviews.
He still initially believed he would portray the heroics of unsung rescuers, even settling on the headline, "No Rest for the Wired." He thinks about the limitations of the writer's box, how a story gets shaped.
But he realizes now there's so much more to excavate. New African cables costing billions, corporations controlling cables and information, what he calls a well-dressed shell game, myopia, greed. He sees that information itself can be owned, tapped. His understanding has deepened dramatically.
He recalls focusing early on that firefighters at sea analogy. The emergency run, the chief, the men, dousing underwater flames. Cecchini, his editor, liked it. He planned to ease it into the story. 5-alarm fire, camaraderie, clarion call of the broken.
His mind drifted then to 911 firefighters, and specifically that photo of the falling man from the towers, a waiter or cook described as angelic, an arrow whose flight might never end, a photo that ran on the front page where he used to work.
That's a powerful, unexpected connection. He's seeing parallels between hidden labor-saving global systems, cable repair, urban disasters, 9/11, and individual human experiences of being caught, undone, falling.
He searches online for Conway and Zanel, little new. Zanel suspended private accounts but is still acting. Conway, no social media trail. He sends emails, messages to Zanel's agency, to Sam Cullo. Abdul, no response. He tracks the Georges online, finding it curiously intimate now. Feels he lived a vortex existence at sea.
The publicist, Elizabeth, contacts him again, insistent he show her drafts before publication. He politely refuses her demands for editorial changes, just says, "Please send now." Seems he's holding on to his integrity this time.
He decides to phone Zanel directly, describes himself as stammering, apologizing about Conway. Zanel asks if he was with Conway when he left the Georges. He clarifies, no. He asks if she's heard from him. Her reply is guarded. He doesn't want to be heard from.
She asks him for assurance not to make a fuss, saying, "We've gone through a lot." He notes Villian is present in the condo, outside feeding a dog described as lean and brown and scruffy, with a severe limp.
The narrator says he's glad to hear Conway is okay, but Zanel doesn't respond to that. He pushes, asking if Conway is still in Africa. Zanel replies, really, that's Conway's business, but does ask him to let her know if he hears anything.
Villian comes back inside, her hand scratched by the dog. The narrator offers to pay for shots, but she declines. It's really nothing. Casual.
Leaning closer to the phone, the narrator asks one more question. Has Conway gone back to Ireland? Zanel's reply is the same deflection. It's Conway's business.
The narrator sits for a moment. The realization hits. Conway is alive, but Zanel is either unwilling or unable to say where. His survival is a balm, a relief, but the mystery is still thick.
Villian plates food but declines to join him, calling him Professor. He asks about her hand again, she dismisses it, prepares to leave, promises to bring the towel back, but she lingers at the door, asks about his lady friend, Zanel. The narrator calls her an acquaintance from South Africa.
And Villian's reaction is sharp, direct. I don't like her. She sounds slick, polished. And she just closes the door.
Wow, that's incredibly blunt, just from hearing her voice. The narrator admits Zanelli sounded that way, but he defends her, understands her situation, nobody to trust, attacked, scrutiny, relationship fell apart. He sees the polished surface as a necessary defense mechanism.
He watches Villian walk away through the gates, noting her all-color, her bright headscarf. He thinks about the walk to the fishing village, considers driving her, but the moment's passed. Early dark is settling. The phone call gave little clarity, but knowing Conway survived helps. He thinks he can finish the article now with a simplified narrative.
Yeah, the easy version. Chief marshaled his team, guided the ship to port, final repair, left for personal reasons. No mention of Zanelli, abandonment, domestic issues. Keep it clean.
He has a few days left in Accra. Rereads his draft, finds it a tad anodyne, bland but nearly done. Cicchini's edits were pedestrian. She wasn't convinced by the fireman analogy but let it slide. Designers are preparing a slideshow. It's becoming just a piece.
He reflects on something he's observed about West Africa. Later seldom comes. The hour arrives, but the promise lags behind. A sense of delayed or broken promises.
His condo life becomes oscillated. Food delivered, curtains closed, world tightened, rental car idle. Avoids the beach now, sees it as sinister, full of rubbish. Realizes the dog he saw earlier was actually a series of wild, skinny dogs. Sees men near the compound wire, dislikes his own distrust. Hears voices, echoes. Feels he doesn't belong, pasty, cowardly, not Hemingway.
Despite this isolation and self-doubt, he notes sobriety as a fight he won. He kicked the habit. He feels he repaired myself on the boat, believes he can write novels again, even if this article isn't what he imagined. There's personal growth happening alongside the external search.
He sees Villian at the compound gates with shopping bags. Her face flushes, something unsaid from the day Zanel called. She mentions Paul told her he got a new job, but it didn't quite work out. He offers her a lift. She declines, says she's fine. Fishermen watch. He gives a case of wine to the fisherman nearby, a small gesture.
He finds Villian later at the edge of the village, head of a dirt road past the dump. Smoke is thick, coming from the hills beyond the dunes, a slag heap.
Villian points beyond the smoke, saying, all the minerals. The narrator plays along, acting like he knows where they come from Africa, of course, and asked where they go, assuming, obvious places, right? They don't end up here.
And Villian's reply is just devastating. Wrong. Her words are sharp and clear, piercing him.
She lays it all out. The system, greed, mining, plunder, roads gouged into forests, ignored stories. She lists the metals: gold, bauxite, aluminum, cobalt, copper, vermiculite, diamonds, uranium from the Congo. She reminds him of Zanel's earlier mention of 4 billion tons of industrial waste.
She thinks maybe only women stay focused on these things, the true stories. Land taken, stripping down, leaving, poisoning. It's a powerful indictment.
He reaches the summit of the hill and sees this horrifying garden of ash behind the dump mounds of bags, dump trucks, containers, burned out cars, scorched earth, cinders, just devastation.
Villian leads him to barrels, cooking on wood smoke. He sees a strange shape on a spet, a goat. He makes a flippant remark about hygiene. Villian just smiles. Knows better.
Then Villian points down the row of barrels. He's confused at first, then the horror dawns on him. He realizes what he's seeing. Young men slicing cable with razor blades, this thin snake separating strands. At a second barrel, gutting and heating portions, liquid dripping. At a third, shaking a sieve.
Villian explains they are reclaiming the mineral wealth from the cables. It's hard, dangerous work done by hand. Extracting the copper wire inside takes months. The metal is taken by trucks. They get paid almost nothing, maybe 1,000 CD for a month's work, less than $200 USD, while buyers make 10,000 and the big men millions.
She explains the full, devastating cycle. Copper comes from Africa, Congo, Zambia, goes away, comes back as cable, is buried in the ocean, washes up here, gets snagged in nets, pulled in because it's heavy with metal. It's a brutal loop.
And then Villian drops the bombshell, the real twist. Conway brought the cable here. He was the one who blew it up. He lived in a small house on the hill for a few months, paid these boys to cut it, bringing it up in sections.
Oh my God, so Conway wasn't the chief fixing the cables. He was the one breaking them. And then profiting from salvaging the materials through this exploitative labor. The unsung rescuer narrative is completely shattered, utterly destroyed.
Yes. The truth is far more complex and deeply morally compromised. The narrator asks if Felian is sure Conway is gone. Yes. How did he leave? Took a boat north along the coast. He told the boys it was time to leave, said sorry he had little to give.
And he told them not to cut the new cable because they might get electrocuted. A final warning, maybe? Is that all?
Yes. Can the narrator talk to the boys? Yes, but Velian just shrugs. Like, what good would it do?
The dump is on one side, the sea on the other. The sea doesn't look vast anymore, does it? Just a source of salvage. Cinder burns his face, Felian brushes it away, and she gives him a final instruction, loaded with the weight of everything. Go home, Professor. Wow. Just go home. What else can he do?
He reflects again on living in two worlds, the official story, the story he was going to write, and this brutal reality. He recalls the sheen mirror scene from Apocalypse. Now again, the struggle between mind and body driving his fists through his reflection, the conflict between the constructed narrative and the raw truth.
Back in his condo, he leans against the glass, mocking glass, face to face with his reflection, seascape quivering outside, moon, smoke drifting. He turns, sees his computer light, wants to smash it, but knows he won't. He's left wrestling with this shattered reality and his own complicity, his inability to act, maybe.
The narrative shifts structure here, doesn't it? It moves to a kind of memoir-like reconstruction of Conway's last year, the bombings, pieced together after Accra. The narrator takes liberties, leaves gaps, acknowledges so much that we cannot know.
He places Conway's disappearance in spring 2019, before the virus that crushed time obliterated chronology. He tries to reconstruct Conway's final year, noting the general presumption was Conway descended into pure madness, lost the proper run of himself.
He reflects that Conway knew he needed to live in a dual reality, seen and unseen, to do his job properly. He imagines Conway preparing in an apartment, body needing to get back in tune, doing intense physical exercises, sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups, sandbag weights, building stamina for something demanding, preparing for war almost.
He describes Conway's dive preparation exercises on a boat, presumably leading up to the bombings, rowing out to quiet bays near landing stations, dropping a sandbag anchor using a reinforced pole, goggles, nose clips, no fins or weights, practicing equalizing, diving deep 10 meters, 25 meters, 40 meters.
The focus isn't on seeing the underwater world, but on emptying his mind, except for the depth gauge, teaching his body to relax, be calm, get close to nothing. He calls the blue light jazz. It's intense mental and physical discipline, maybe preparing for something requiring absolute focus under extreme pressure.
The narrator also reflects again on Xanil, her township, Aloe Fields, seeing her face in Dublin newsagents, connecting her reality to his own worldview. He thinks, we can hardly congratulate ourselves for the mess we've left him, can we? It links that historical exploitation to the environmental and economic messes of the present. It's all connected.
He discusses the theories about Conway's motive. No clear political group, no manifesto, nobody really knew him. This reinforced the public idea of madness or schizophrenia. He mentions doctors' theories, a physical brain snap, neuron disruption, chemicals, even arterial blockage from diving, trying to find a rational explanation.
The narrator's own theory is broken heart, takutubo, a real medical condition brought on by stress. But he also considers a heroic element, doesn't he? Seeing Conway as mythic, like Hey Duke or Let's Stay, literary saboteurs. A millennial portrait, destruction as artful creation.
It's a struggle to understand him. Was he mentally ill, heartbroken, a mythic saboteur, or just a criminal driven by something else? The narrator seems to hold all possibilities open.
He recounts Conway's dive for the second cable break, off Egypt. Calculations, diving further out, over 60 meters. Tiring body, mind. Choppier, colder, darker water. Near a busier harbor end, possibility of patrols.
He describes Conway managing the small boat in waves, keeping low, centered, waterproof bag with the thermite charge intact. Checking coordinates, scanning for the Coast Guard. Hearing radio chatter in Arabic about the first break. Tense.
Conway dove within hours to 67 meters. Successfully blew the second cable.
What was found afterward paints a grim picture, offers clues. His floating boat, goggles, shattered headlamp glass, shattered, suggesting force. One side of the goggles scorched, suggesting he lingered too close to the thermite ignition. The bag was under more pressure at this depth.
The narrator speculates it combusted with significant force, surprising Conway, blowing him sideways, catching him in the flames upshoot. Disoriented, depleted oxygen, maybe gasped, lost control, breath galloping. In darkness, disoriented, swam laterally, doubted direction, descended a reverse Icarus, falling down instead of up.
But the narrator also offers that alternative again. It's possible Conway knew exactly what awaited him at that depth and found peace in that final act. We just don't know.
News of this bombing off Egypt shot through the media within days. Headlines like, "Major Mediterranean cables bombed," initially attributed to an Islamic group, though the text cuts off there in the source.
The narrator watches scuba divers footage from Egypt. Foggy underwater, low visibility, notes lack of security near the landing station. Divers attempt dives, stumble upon a reinforced cable section at over 60 meters, follow it.
And see something unexpected suspended below the cable, attached by plastic zip ties, a black backpack looking like a rectangular fish. Panic erupts in the footage. Understandably.
Aftermath on land. Footage cuts to divers driving fast to find signal for bomb disposal. Later, static footage shows them interviewing each other. Taller diver describes finding the bomb, claims he defused it. The young woman with him just rolls her eyes. More unreliable narration, perhaps.
Royal Navy experts defused the bomb the next day, found nothing to defuse bag filled with sand, a copycat device. Assumed same perpetrators as Egypt, as the backpack burned. Didn't matter, it wasn't real. It showed the saboteur contemplated more.
And this triggered worldwide investigations near landing stations. Led to 10 other bags being found. Florida, Long Island, New Jersey, Marseille, Norway, Black Sea, same material, zip-tied to cables.
Wow. Confirms the global reach of the sabotage and the copycat incidents. Reinforces the theme of these cables as vulnerable, critical infrastructure, now a target. The hidden network suddenly very visible, very threatened.
The narrative jumps forward again. Narrator is 51 in London, Pimlico. City feels oppressive, a heap of broken images, nerves sizzling, heat, no aircon, unease. Conway's story still affects him deeply, reaches in, turns heart, squeeze of arteries. Almost a year since Egypt bombing, Conway has entered into folklore.
The narrator came to London hoping to put it all to rest, find some closure. But Zainal and her people aren't returning calls. Nothing, once begun, ever properly finishes. That feels true to this story.
Zanelli, meanwhile, was hauled into the frame by journalists after the bombings. They pushed the consummate con man notion. Conway conned her, faked his identity. That story sold well.
Zainal's statement was careful. They were friends, known each other years, mourning his loss, asked for privacy. Narrator knew she wouldn't be left alone. He notes her accomplished career plays, films, essays, including Where We Come From and one about 4 billion tons of industrial waste. Sees her using her platform to throw a metaphorical stone, fighting back in her own way.
He wrote to her again personally, but replies stopped. Silence. Felt ghosted. Disappointed, but understood, given everything.
He arranges an interview with an Irish writer in London, notes their mutual dislike. Envy is a dark ink, describes the writer's dandyish look, attends a rehearsal, then the opening performance. Masks required placing this maybe just before or during early pandemic times.
At the performance, he sees Zanel cross the lobby towards Aubrey Mimodi. He puts his arm around her, guides her to the door, another public glimpse of their relationship. They seem solid.
The narrator isn't sure if Zanel gave him her address and an early afternoon time out of politeness, if she's separate from handlers, or if she'll even be surprised to see him. But he intends to go. The Irish writer notices his distraction, asks, "What the fuck was that about?" He leaves in a daze, walks back to Pimlico, not bothered by the heat anymore, focused.
Walks down Cheyne Walk, curses his shirt choice in the heat. The address surprises him, a houseboat. Not grand, but simple, elegant, understated.
Zanel greets him, jokes about the boat being creaky at flood tide, feeling strange at ebb tide, takes his elbow, guides him in, a gesture of welcome, different from the silence.
He asks how long she's lived there, temporary, renovating another place. He assumes Kensington, Chelsea. But Zanel says, we have a new house in Graberha, noting her tongue's way of saying it.
Graberha. Port Elizabeth? She's moving back to South Africa. That's significant.
She introduces him to Aubrey Mimodi, sitting by a fan spraying water. Appears moody, but stands, shakes hands, meets the children, Tommy and Imka, playing dominoes, just back from summer camp. They wave. The scene feels remarkably ordinary. No maids, no visible security cameras. A stark contrast to the earlier intensity.
Zanel watches a passing boat, capable of sitting in silence, a treat the narrator shares and appreciates. A moment of quiet understanding, perhaps.
The narrator finally says it. I'm sorry about what happened. Zanel replies, there's no need. She and Conway just couldn't quite figure it out. For a long time, she didn't want to think about it. Suggests survival comes from the ability to forget.
He asks as if she has forgotten. She says, Plainly no, sweeping her arm out, encompassing everything. It's an echo of something. He likes her again in this moment. She adds, she shouldn't talk about it with the kids there. They're leaving soon. Aubrey taking them to the park.
There's a squeal of delight as Aubrey sprays the kids with water. A simple, joyful family moment. Zanelle says, see? Walks to them, kneels before Emka, adjusts her dress.
She stands, nods at Momodi notably, no kiss, and escorts the children down the gangplank towards the pier. The narrator is left watching them go, feeling as if I was the one who lives on the houseboat and was watching her go. A sense of displacement, maybe? Or just observing a life moving on.
What a complex, layered story this turns out to be. It takes us from one man's personal adriftness, doesn't it, all the way into the vast, hidden world of undersea cables and the, well, devastating realities of global systems.
Yeah, you see the visible events, the internet outage, the ship repair, the attack celebrity, but the narrative constantly pulls back the curtain to reveal what's hidden. The infrastructure, the difficult labor, the mysterious motives, the compromises.
And the brutal economic realities Villian exposes at the end. That garden of ash.
By following the narrator's journey, his evolving understanding, the story shows us how seemingly isolated events, a cable break, an attack, a disappearance, scrap metal sorting, are deeply interconnected.
Through global systems, human actions, and the control of information and resources, it powerfully raises questions about who benefits from these systems and who ultimately pays the cost, often unseen, right?
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, maybe think about the things you rely on that you rarely see. That invisible infrastructure, the cables bringing you this information right now, the shipping lanes, the systems of resource extraction, the labor that underpins our world.
What might we be missing or misunderstanding about the world when so much of its fundamental reality, its true costs, and its hidden connections are kept out of sight, go unreported, or are deliberately well classified?
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.